The second law of power strikes at something deeply counterintuitive to our social conditioning. From childhood, we're taught that friends are our greatest assets, that loyalty to those we care about is a virtue, and that keeping enemies close is dangerous. Robert Greene's Law 2 inverts this wisdom entirely, arguing that friends are often more dangerous than enemies in the realm of power, and that former enemies, when converted, make the most loyal and useful allies. This law emerges from a cold observation about human nature: friendship and power make uncomfortable bedfellows. The very qualities that make someone a good friend, familiarity, comfort, emotional intimacy, create vulnerabilities in professional and political contexts. Meanwhile, the person who starts as your adversary, once won over, has every incentive to prove their worth and loyalty because they're still earning your trust rather than presuming upon it. The law doesn't advocate abandoning friendship altogether, but rather recognizing that mixing friendship with power dynamics creates a volatile compound. When you elevate a friend to a position of influence or power, you introduce corruption into both the friendship and the power relationship. The friend feels entitled to special treatment, expects favors that compromise merit, and often harbors hidden resentments that fester beneath the surface of familiarity. Consider the psychology at work. When you succeed and your friend does not, an invisible tension enters the relationship. Your friend may genuinely love you and wish you well, but human nature includes envy as one of its fundamental components. The closer someone is to you, the more acutely they feel the comparison between your achievements and their own situation. A stranger's success is abstract, a friend's success is a mirror that reflects their own limitations. This dynamic intensifies when you hire a friend or give them a position of responsibility. In their mind, they believe they deserve this opportunity based on your history together. They feel they've earned it through loyalty, through the times they supported you, through the emotional capital they've invested in the relationship. But this sense of entitlement is precisely what makes them dangerous. They're less likely to feel they need to prove themselves, less likely to accept criticism, and more likely to take liberties that someone earning your trust would never attempt. The friend expects special treatment, but when you must treat them professionally, holding them to standards, criticizing their work, denying them favors, they experience it as betrayal. You're violating the unspoken contract of friendship. The professional boundaries you need to maintain feel, to them, like coldness or ingratitude. Meanwhile, you're caught in an impossible position: maintain standards and damage the friendship, or make exceptions and undermine your own authority and effectiveness. Even worse, friends often know your weaknesses, your secrets, your vulnerabilities. In a moment of anger or disappointment, they have weapons that strangers lack. A falling out with a friend can be far more destructive than a conflict with an enemy because they know exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. Against this backdrop, the former enemy presents an entirely different dynamic. When you extend an opportunity to someone who once opposed you, you create a powerful psychological shift. First, you demonstrate strength and magnanimity: you're confident enough to bring a former adversary into your circle. Second, you give that person something they didn't expect: a chance to prove themselves. The former enemy has no illusions about their position. They know they're being given an opportunity, not claiming an entitlement. They understand that they must earn your trust through performance and loyalty. They have everything to gain from proving themselves and everything to lose from betraying you. Unlike the friend who presumes upon your affection, the former enemy operates with clarity about the terms of your relationship. Moreover, the act of converting an enemy demonstrates your power in a way that rewarding friends never can. Anyone can be kind to those who like them. It takes true strength and strategic thinking to transform opposition into alliance. This sends a message to everyone watching: opposition to you is not permanent exile but potentially a path to opportunity. It makes you appear both strong and fair, two qualities that attract loyalty more effectively than mere favoritism toward friends. History provides countless examples. When Abraham Lincoln formed his cabinet, he deliberately included his fiercest political rivals: William Seward, Salmon Chase, Edward Bates, men who had competed against him for the presidency. These former enemies brought talent, legitimacy, and diverse perspectives. More importantly, by giving them positions of genuine authority, Lincoln bound them to his administration's success. They had every incentive to make the government work because its failure would be their failure too. Had Lincoln instead filled his cabinet with old friends from Illinois, he would have had loyalty but lacked the talent and credibility his former rivals provided. The Chinese strategist Sun Tzu understood this principle centuries earlier. After defeating an enemy army, wise commanders would often incorporate the vanquished soldiers into their own forces. These converted enemies fought with particular ferocity in subsequent battles, driven by the need to prove their loyalty and erase any doubt about their commitment. The reason friends become liabilities in power situations isn't primarily about their intentions but about the structural dynamics that friendship creates. Friendship operates on principles of equality, mutual support, and emotional reciprocity. Power operates on hierarchy, strategic calculation, and performance-based reward. These systems are fundamentally incompatible. When you bring a friend into a professional context where you have authority over them, several corruptions inevitably occur. First, the friend often feels they've already proven themselves through the personal relationship, so they don't approach the professional role with the hunger and diligence of someone who's still earning their place. Second, other people notice the favoritism, whether real or perceived, which undermines morale and creates resentment throughout your organization. Third, you become unable to evaluate your friend objectively because your judgment is clouded by affection and history. Perhaps most insidiously, the friend relationship makes it nearly impossible to fire or demote someone when they're underperforming. You're not just making a professional decision, you're potentially ending a friendship. The personal cost becomes so high that you tolerate mediocrity or even incompetence longer than you should, and this tolerance becomes visible to everyone around you, demonstrating that personal relationships matter more than merit in your organization. Furthermore, friends often assume an intimacy in professional settings that creates problems. They might speak too casually in front of others, revealing your thoughts or strategies inappropriately. They might feel entitled to question your decisions in ways that undermine your authority. They might share confidences with others, not from malice but from the habit of openness that friendship encourages. Each of these behaviors erodes the mystique and authority that power requires. In contemporary professional environments, law too manifests constantly, though we're often reluctant to acknowledge it. The startup founded by college friends frequently implodes not from business failure but from the collision between friendship expectations and professional necessity. The friends who started the company as equals discover that as the organization grows, hierarchy becomes necessary. Someone must be the CEO with final authority. Someone must be subordinate. The friendship cannot survive this transition intact because it was built on equality, and power requires differentiation. Corporate environments are filled with cautionary tales of executives who hired their friends for key positions, only to find themselves unable to hold those friends accountable when performance lagged. The friendship became a shield against professional standards, and the organization suffered. Meanwhile, the friendship itself often deteriorated because professional proximity revealed incompatibilities that social friendship had masked. Working with someone daily, depending on them for results, and needing to critique their performance creates stresses that casual friendship never encounters. The investment world illustrates this law with particular clarity. Venture capitalists have a saying about backing founders who are friends: you'll either end up with no company or no friendship, and usually both. The intimacy that makes friendship valuable becomes a liability when business decisions must be made dispassionately. Friends struggle to fire each other, to radically pivot when one person's pet project must be abandoned, or to bring in outside expertise that might diminish a friend's role. These struggles kill companies. Understanding law too doesn't require becoming a Machiavellian operator who views every relationship through a lens of cold utility. Rather, it suggests maintaining boundaries between different spheres of relationship. You can have genuine friendships, but you should be extremely cautious about mixing those friendships with power dynamics and professional dependency. If you must work with friends, the relationship needs explicit negotiation about how you'll handle the dual nature of your connection. You need agreements about how criticism will be delivered and received, how decisions will be made, and what happens if the professional relationship must end. Most importantly, you both need to recognize that the professional hierarchy, if one exists, takes precedence in professional contexts. Without these explicit negotiations, you're simply waiting for the inevitable crisis when friendship expectations collide with professional necessity. The corollary about using former enemies also requires nuance. You don't seek out enemies for their own sake, nor do you trust a former enemy immediately and completely. Rather, when circumstances create opposition, you remain open to the possibility of converting that opposition into alliance. You recognize that someone who fought against you might have valuable qualities, intelligence, determination, skill, that led them to oppose you effectively. Those same qualities, redirected toward your purposes, become assets. The process of converting an enemy requires genuine opportunity, not mere lip service. You can't bring a former rival into your organization and then marginalize them or set them up to fail. That creates a bitter enemy with inside knowledge of your operations. Instead, you give them real responsibility, real authority, and a genuine chance to succeed. Their success becomes tied to your success, creating aligned incentives that mere friendship can never establish as clearly. At the heart of Law 2 lies a fundamental insight about trust. The friend assumes trust as a given, a foundation of the relationship that doesn't need to be continually earned. This assumption creates complacency. The former enemy, by contrast, knows that trust must be earned through demonstrated loyalty and performance. This awareness creates vigilance and effort. Think of how you behave around someone whose good opinion you already possess versus someone whose respect you're still working to gain. With the former, you relax, you take shortcuts, you assume latitude. With the latter, you're attentive, you exceed expectations, you prove yourself. The friend, having your affection already secured, operates in the first mode. The former enemy operates in the second. This dynamic explains why organizations often perform better when led by people who came up through competitive rather than collegial paths. The executive who had to fight for every promotion, who had rivals and had to outperform them, maintains a sharpness that someone who advanced through friendly networks often lacks. They never fully relax into the assumption that their position is secure, they keep proving themselves. It also explains why nepotism so consistently produces mediocrity. The nephew hired because of family connection doesn't feel the same pressure to excel as the stranger hired purely for talent. The nephew's position isn't based on performance, so performance becomes secondary. Meanwhile, everyone else in the organization sees that connection matters more than merit, which undermines motivation across the board. There are exceptions to Law 2, situations where friendship and power can coexist more successfully. These typically involve relationships where both parties maintain strict professional boundaries, where the friendship exists in one sphere and the professional relationship in another, and where both people are mature enough to accept critique and hierarchy without taking it personally. Such friendships usually develop after the professional relationship is established, not before. Two colleagues who work together successfully might become friends, but the professional relationship provides the foundation and the structure. They know each other first as competent professionals, and friendship builds on that foundation rather than preceding it. Additionally, friendships between equals, where neither has power over the other but they collaborate as peers, can be enormously productive. Creative partnerships, academic collaborations, and business partnerships among equals can harness friendship's benefits while avoiding the corruption that hierarchy introduces. But even here, success requires clear roles, explicit decision-making processes, and usually some formal structure to handle disputes. The key distinguisher is whether the friendship creates expectations that conflict with professional necessity. If both parties understand that professional standards supersede friendship privileges, if both can accept criticism without experiencing it as personal betrayal, and if both prioritize the work over the relationship, then friendship might survive professional proximity. But these are rare qualities, and assuming you and your friend possess them without testing is a dangerous gamble. Law 2 teaches a broader principle about entitlement and power. Anyone who believes they're entitled to your favor, protection, or advancement based on something other than current performance becomes a liability. Friends feel entitled based on history. Family feels entitled based on blood. Long-serving employees feel entitled based on tenure. All of these forms of entitlement create the same problem: they substitute past connection for present value. The person who knows they must continually earn their place operates with a different mindset entirely. They focus on contribution, on making themselves valuable, on proving their worth. This creates a healthier dynamic for both parties. You get better performance, and they get genuine achievement rather than favors. This doesn't mean being callous or ungrateful toward those who've supported you. Gratitude and loyalty have their place. But in the realm of power and professional responsibility, they cannot be the primary basis for position and authority. When you elevate someone, it should be because they're the best person for that role, not because of what they meant to you in the past. The former enemy who becomes an ally represents this principle in its purest form. They have no claim on you based on history. Everything they receive, they must earn through performance. This clarity creates a relationship built on mutual benefit rather than emotional obligation, and such relationships tend to be more stable and productive in professional contexts. Law 2 asks us to maintain a separation that our emotional nature resists. We want to believe that the people we care about are also the people we should empower, that loyalty to friends is the highest virtue, that personal affection and professional competence naturally align. But power operates in a different register than friendship, with different rules and different requirements. The wisdom of this law lies not in eliminating friendship from life but in recognizing where friendship belongs and where it becomes a liability. Keep your friends in the sphere of personal life, where affection and loyalty can flourish without the corruption that power introduces. In the professional sphere, in the realm of authority and responsibility, choose people based on what they can contribute, not on how you feel about them. And remain open to the possibility that your most valuable allies might come from unexpected places. The person who opposed you demonstrated that they have strength, conviction, and capability. These qualities don't disappear when the opposition ends, they can be redirected. By converting an enemy into an ally, you gain not just their abilities but also their gratitude, their need to prove themselves, and their clear understanding that your relationship is based on mutual benefit rather than sentimental attachment. This is the hard wisdom of Law 2, in power, clarity matters more than affection, and earned loyalty matters more than assumed friendship. Those who grasp this principle spare themselves the bitter experience of betrayal by friends and discover the surprising reliability of former enemies who have everything to gain by proving their worth.